Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today it is a beautiful victory Monday with the Vikings overcoming the Dallas Cowboys down in Texas. 28-24 victory. I'm honestly shocked at how that game turned out, so we will break down.
You picked the Vikings.
I know I did, but as I watched Dak Prescott drive down the field, I was admittedly very nervous. So we will break down that game, every inch of it, and talk in depth about that. We will also be doing our Skol Scale to judge both our optimism as well as a couple of you guys as well. As always, you can make sure to submit your responses to that on @unbelievable_MN on Twitter. After that, we will talk a little bit about the Timberwolves. Drew will talk a little bit about the Timberwolves, and I will navigate that with him. And then we're going to spend some time on the Gophers, which is something we haven't done yet on this show. I'm admittedly not a Gopher fan, so I can give an objective take on the team, I think, and it should be. This is straight up like that was one of the best football games that I've ever seen. At least college football games, but as a whole, one of the better pure football games that I've ever seen. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in depth, and that should be a fun discussion. But as always, this show will primarily focus on the Vikings, and as it should after coming off of what I deem to be a big win on the road. So. That is the game plan for today, so let's just hop right into it here. I'll give you your brief recap that you don't need, that I always do here. Vikings go down to Texas, beat the Dallas Cowboys by a final of 28-24. Things got off to a great start, 14-0 after the first quarter. Vikings dominated time of possession in that quarter and also got it done. Running the ball and actually moving it through the air as well. Kyle Rudolph scored a couple times. Dallas kind of took control during the second quarter. It was a bit of an ugly quarter, but the Vikings were able to get a late field goal thanks to a good 2-minute drill led by Cousins. Third and fourth quarter started to get a little bit interesting, I suppose, but ultimately the defense, which was kind of in bend but don't break mode all night long, was able to come up with the big play. Eric Kendricks continues to perform at an extremely high level and show that pass coverage talent that I remember talking about quite a bit when he was at UCLA, and that's really starting to show up in a big way, and definitely in a big moment. So that is the brief. Let's start with the quarterback like we normally do here, Kirk Cousins. He comes in before we start here, I want to say that I personally have never been someone to write a quarterback off simply based off of kind of stats that prove your narrative. Just looking at with Kirk Cousins, I don't even know what his record was as in prime time, but I know that it wasn't good, and I know that people always like to talk about that. But his quote at the end of in his press conference after, I thought that was very telling and honestly very accurate. Like, he's always played pretty well. It's just that his team's record has not been very good, but he adds a win to the docket here. He played fine. Maybe not his best game ever, but he did the things that he needed to do, and he was clutch in the red zone.
Yeah, I think to sum up the performance he made, and he was accurate on throws he was asked to make, but I don't think the throws he was asked to make were all that.
I think they only had two throws downfield.
Yeah,
all game.
Yeah, the Diggs one, which was underthrown for what it's worth.
Yep.
But Diggs came back and made the catch. That was the one I'm thinking of now. There's other ones too, I'm sure. But point being, a lot of the stuff was short and intermediate, and he hit those throws for what it's worth. But when Dalvin's running that well, when Madison's running that well, it opens things up and it allows the Vikings to get away with kind of a condensed passing game. So it worked, and Kirk didn't make a mistake, didn't fumble. Didn't turn it over, and that's I think the biggest ask right now is,
don't turn the ball over. Yeah, that's right. A good point.
My asks of him in the primetime games, it seems like he's kind of making the big mistake when it matters. When maybe the game's in crunch time. I think back to the Rams game last year, for as good as he played for the entire game, he coughed it up when the Vikings were trying to drive down and score. Like, that's the kind of mistake that he seems to be making in these big games. Didn't happen here.
It didn't happen last week either, for what it's worth.
Right.
He's been, I believe it's 3 games straight now. I think there was a reporter during the media scrum after the game that brought up that I think it's been 3 games now without a turnover for Kirk, and the last one that he had, if my memory serves correctly, was actually that interception that bounced off Diggs' hand. So
that might be right.
So he's been pretty exceptional, keeping control of the ball and sustaining offensive drives. I know that Dalvin Cook is a big part of that, and obviously we'll be talking about him quite a bit here too because he continues to perform at an MVP level.
I think Kirk wasn't awesome, but he wasn't bad. It was exactly good, which is fine by me.
So,
like if that's good enough to win against an NFC playoff contender on the road at their place, fine by me.
So the one throw that I can think of that wasn't good was up the seam on the left side of the field to Kyle Rudolph. There's a safety over the top, and he had a linebacker in coverage. So he picked the right matchup. It was a good decision, which for me, when you're breaking down a quarterback's performance, I think it's always important to first look at the decision and then look at the execution because it's 2 separate things, right? Mm-hmm. The decision was outstanding. He picked Kyle Rudolph on a linebacker one-on-one, crossing over the field. I'll take that matchup all the time. The throw itself was pretty bad, like as bad of a throw as...
It was a Keenum floater is what it was.
Yeah. It was as bad of a throw as I think you're going to see Cousins make, period. He was lucky that safety didn't get a good enough break on the ball to make a play on it. But that was really the only bad... Like, even the one that he threw to Diggs down the sideline, I know that Diggs did the majority of the work to make that play happen, but...
Well, if you give a guy one-on-one, if you give Diggs if it's one-on-one, throw the ball. Like, I don't really care where it is.
And it was back shoulder, though, too. That's what I thought was the beauty of it.
And maybe that's the plan. It just seemed like it was, he had to fall to his knees to catch the ball.
Right.
But he did make the catch for what
but other than those 2 throws, I mean, I think that as a whole, he played a pretty good game. Now, you mentioned the condensed game plan, or at least the passing game. The passing attack was condensed, and I think that's a good way to put it because that's exactly what it was. At the same time, I thought that game plan was exactly what the Vikings needed to do. I thought that Stefanski came in with a plan, executed 2 straight drives in a row, which is outstanding. Get started hot, put the ball in Dalvin's hands, let him go to work. But what he did with the game plan that was so interesting was he continuously changed the launch angle that Kirk Cousins was throwing from, right? So first, it started with screens, which are simple completions to kind of, and I know that you've probably heard this from every sports talk radio host in the state, but it's a way to get Kirk Cousins feeling it, get his confidence up a little bit, right? Throw those quick screens, let Dalvin go to work. I mean, the air yards in the first 2 throws that Cousins made were like 4 compared to 16. The first 3 touches that Dalvin Cook had through the air, I think they traveled 6 yards, and he on the ground went 69 yards. Nice. So he didn't have to do a whole lot, but as the game continued to develop, you started seeing the levels concepts. You started seeing some intermediate throws. A couple that stand out to me were B.C. Johnson's lone catch for a first down. I mean, that was an excellent throw, and you can always you can count on B.C. to make that play. And then even Treadwell had a nice catch as well that moved the chains. I thought it was hilarious that the broadcasters spent 15 seconds talking about how it's a redemption story for Treadwell, which it's not. But as a whole, he completed passes to all of his playmakers. Irv Smith got involved again as well. He actually had the second most receptions in this game. So he's becoming kind of the number 2 target behind Diggs, at least as a receiver. And I thought that Kirk did a great job managing the game. Sage Rosenfels on 1500 today said that he looked like Alex Smith. And I think that's a perfect kind of that's a perfect way to put it. I think because that's exactly what he looked like. It was short completions that you get the ball in the hands of your playmakers and you let them go to work, and then when you have to throw the ball downfield, you complete it. And when you get in the red zone, you make plays. That's
right, and I think people are going to hear that as a knock on him because I think Alex Smith has that.
He has that dumb reputation, but he's a winner.
But he's won a lot of games, both in San Francisco and Kansas City. So, I mean, that's fine. He didn't turn the ball over a lot, and when you have a roster that's talented and a unit on defense, and you have playmakers, that's fine with me. Whatever wins games. And Kirk right now, he's not turning the ball over. He's playing mistake-free quarterback position, and it's Yeah, it's working. And then you finally found Kyle Rudolph a couple times.
It was beautiful.
It's been a while since he's been involved as much as he was, although he only totaled 14 receiving yards, but on 4 catches and a fantastic touchdown grab. And again, this is without Adam Thielen too, so you get him back into the mix probably after the bye week.
Hopefully, yeah.
That's kind of, I would think, the hope that'd give him another 3 extra weeks to kind of heal up the hamstring. But I mean, again, this is a huge win. NFC, contender in the playoffs on the road, a primetime game. It's helping me forget the sort of the narratives around Kirk. Obviously, I still have some doubts, but it's going to take a while for me to get over those. But like the next test now is Seattle Monday night, week 13. If you can play well in that game, I will be very much in, so to speak, on Kirk Cousins as the quarterback to take the Vikings deep into the playoffs.
Absolutely. The one thing that I want to highlight about Kirk Cousins that I noticed when he gets down into the red zone, he plays a little scared when he gets into the red zone, I think. Okay, let me extrapolate on that because I know that might come off and you guys are like, what the hell are you talking about?
I think I know what you're talking about. I think I know what you're going to say.
So this is what I noticed. So he's more prone to throwing the ball away when he gets into the red zone. And I'm okay with that. Don't get me wrong, because we destroyed him for not throwing the ball away good enough against Green Bay, and that was a big problem.
That's okay? What what I thought you were going to say.
But I think that's in his head. So I think that he's overcorrecting, right? When you make a mistake, think about the last mistake that you made at work. You never want to make that. You don't ever want to get yelled at by your boss again. Imagine if your boss was Mike Zimmer yelling at you. You never want that to happen again. So you overcorrect, right? Now, to me, he needs to come back, kind of find a happy medium, because the one play that pissed me off, well, there's 2 plays that pissed me off that he had, but the one that really, really bothered me was when he had BC Johnson in the corner of the end zone on the right side. It was a broken play, and BC...
Yeah, he rolled out to his right.
Yeah, and BC did a good job kind of getting himself open, kind of working independently off of his route, and he had at least 2 steps on the DB, and Kirk threw it out of the back of the end zone. And if he had thrown it to the corner, which he's more than capable of doing, I know he's better throwing on his left than his right, but he could have made that throw for sure. I don't want to see. I would prefer that he takes that shot, especially earlier in a game when you can correct it later if something goes wrong. And then the other problem I had was during the 2-minute drill when he threw over the middle to Irv Smith, and it was like with 8 seconds left, you have 1 timeout, and you throw in the middle of the field. Like, at least take a shot at the end zone there. Was just that was a dumb decision that you kind of don't expect your veteran quarterback to make, especially when Kirk does have, he is very, in my opinion, very good at running that 2-minute drill. That's a mistake that you just don't see him make, and it's just frustrating that you don't even get a shot and you end up with 3 points. And ultimately, those 3 points mattered, and it's good that it worked out the way it did. But in the moment, I was frustrated because 7 definitely sounded a lot better than 3 there.
Yeah, for sure. But in terms of if we're gonna kind of point out those points that maybe the Vikings lost there, I think we should point out too that the 2-point conversion that Zimmer decided to go for clearly paid off. Rudolph with the big catch over the little boy.
Chidobe Awuzie.
Yeah, I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, but you got it there. But that turned out to be huge, obviously, with
little boy.
Dallas needing a touchdown in the end there instead of a field goal. It was weird because I think now, if I remember correctly, the Vikings had the field goal unit on the field, and then I think it was a Dallas penalty maybe or something. Erased that, so the Vikings then went and scored the touchdown. And then, or no, here's what it was: it was Madison scored a touchdown, and then they brought it back. And when they thought the touchdown was going to stand, Zimmer had the field goal unit out for extra point.
There's a false start in between there that backed
right,
up
but
5
I'm saying
yards.
like when Madison's touchdown was on the field, and it was at that point it was a touchdown. Zimmer had the field goal unit out for an extra point, and then with the penalty and whatnot in there between, the touchdown gets called back, and then they score 4 plays later. But then Zimmer puts out, keeps the offense on the field for 2-point conversion.
Yep.
So something was, told to him in his ear, whatever it was, or I don't know if he had a change of heart, whatever. But that
someone looked at the scoreboard. It was a pretty obvious call.
That
but
change
he did make
clearly changed his mind, whatever it was, and it's it's nice to see him kind of be aggressive there because there's times where it would be very Zimmer to kick the extra point there.
Yep.
Basically, is what I'm saying.
Speaking of aggressive plays, he also went for it on fourth down when he could have kicked the field. The Vikings were down 21-20 at the time. Could have kicked the field goal, gone up by 2 points. The guy that I was watching with, we were sitting there, and I kind of leaned over and I was like, that doesn't seem very Zimmer. Normally, Zimmer takes the points, and he's kind of he's a math guy. I'm not a math guy, and he just kind of looked at the score, looked at the screen, did like a quick analysis that all of you guys I'm sure could do as well. That I just in my brain it just doesn't work that way that fast. And was like a 2-point lead in the fourth quarter isn't going to do you all that much good.
Oh no!
And so the right call there is to give the ball to Dalvin Cook and take the shot, or worst case scenario, you turn the ball over on downs and the Cowboys get the ball at the 1 yard line. And you like your chances there as well. So I love to see – I think that Zimmer is getting better at managing games, and I do think that he hates analytics, he hates PFF, all of that, but I do think that to a degree he buys into some of this new era.
Or at the very least he's listening to people that, do trust that kind of perspective, you know. So it's good. I mean, yeah, that stuff needs to – like. I still don't like some of the challenging calls that he makes, and whatnot. But that was huge for the way the game played out. Was A, going for it on 4th and goal there, and then B, going for 2, because the Vikings might not win the game if he doesn't make that decision.
Absolutely. So a quick transition for there. Speaking of not being able to win the game, Vikings needed every ounce of Dalvin Cook in this one. He outdueled Ezekiel Elliott in this game. We came into this week arguing that he probably already is a better player than Ezekiel Elliott. And that
smart people know that already.
Yeah, or at least this season for sure. And I think moving forward, that's kind of how the running back position works. You wear down a little bit in your first couple of years, you get paid, and then you're not really the same guy.
That is true.
Dalvin Cook seems to be on the up and up, whereas Zeke seems to be not like spiraling down like Todd Gurley, but slowly trending downward. So he comes up with 33 touches in this game, which is insane if you think about the amount of hits that he takes, too, because he goes right into it.
Oh, yeah.
And he lowers his shoulders into contact. He typically gets hit at least once before he even goes down, so he's fighting through contact. 33 touches. He comes up with over 180 yards of total offense for the Vikes. Nearly for like the third time this year, almost had a 100 game. So he's dynamic as both a rusher and a receiver. Quite literally changed the game from the outset. He was the guy that got the offense rolling in the beginning with the screen passes, catch and run plays, and then at the end of the game, he was the guy that was churning up the clock alongside Alexander Madison, who turned in another outstanding rushing performance. So, Dalvin Cook, what'd you see from him on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean everything you said. It's the speed and acceleration he has to the edge, like on the outside. Just it's like, I know he didn't test well athletically at the combine and stuff, but it's really
absurd, by the way.
It's remarkable how much different that is from like his test numbers to what it looks like on the field, because he's burning everybody, and he's quick. I mean, he's making people miss. When he gets an open space, the first guy's never going to tackle him. Yeah. That's just it, every single time he's making somebody miss, at least one person. So get him the ball as much as you can, especially on those outside zones. Like you can see that kind of more and more frequently becoming a part of the offense, where they're getting him outside zone, especially when you get CJ Ham leading the way at fullback. Clearly, some good things are happening there. So, and the analytics nowadays, it's like talking about, running back doesn't matter, this and that. And I think a lot of that is true, in that running backs are the most replaceable position, I think, in football.
Right.
But if, Dalvin Cook's making a strong case for the fact that he matters, because it just, some of the things he does on the outside are not repeatable by any running back that I think is playing right now in the NFL.
Yeah, he's less of a running back and more of an offensive weapon, which is a term.
I think that was the exact argument that Le'Veon Bell was making when he held out and tried to get the big contract, was that, no, I'm not a running back, I'm a weapon. And there's something to be said about that argument. But
Right.
when you have Dalvin here going 26 for 97 and then 7 for 86 receiving, you can maybe make that argument a little bit more if you're Dalvin Cook's agent and say, well, while he is a running back, he's leading you in receiving too in several games throughout the season.
Yeah, he's dynamic in the open field. His vision is outstanding. His acceleration, as you put, is great. His straight line speed is better than suggested by his 40 time. I mean, everything about his game is complete right now. He's doing everything at a high level. He's even blocking well. I trust him in quite literally every situation, except for when he gets a toss at the very end of the game.
Every single Vikings fan was screaming, "Just don't fumble, just don't fumble!" And then he immediately nearly drops the pitch play.
I was on the ground. I
got a question for you because some of my friends and I were having an argument about this while it was happening. So, in that situation, the Vikings are up 4, trying to run out the last couple minutes of the clock. Are you okay with the Vikings calling a pitch play there? Where, do you see more risk in
I was just going to bring that. I was just going to bring that up.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not okay
the
with
Vikings
the pitch
all
play.
game, that outside run, the toss, the outside zone, whatever you want to call it, has been, the most effective play for the Vikings all game long. I say do whatever you can to get that first down. Like, you got to get that first down, game's over. And that's what they're trying to do. And it just happened to be the one miscue there, which I think is as likely to happen on a toss play as it would have been on a regular handoff.
Okay, so I disagree with that point right there. That you're much more likely to fumble on a toss play than a handoff because so much more can go wrong. Okay?
See, I don't know if I agree with that. Because,
really? Just think about it.
I'm no running back, but I feel like it's a little bit the technique of getting a handoff. I feel like it's way more difficult than just to catch a ball that's landing right in your hands. I don't know.
Okay, here's my analogy for you, and it's probably a stupid analogy, but it's going to make someone laugh. So we're going to do this.
All right.
Imagine I'm holding your cell phone, right? We're at the bar. Me and you are at the bar, and you go to the bathroom. You're like, hang on to my phone real quick. You come back out there. You walk out, and I say, you come walking over to me. I see you, and I just throw you your phone. Because you're within range, okay? Most of the time, you're gonna catch that ball, right? Or you're gonna catch your phone. You're gonna see it coming, no problem, whatever. But instead, there's an opportunity there where you might drop your phone, for whatever reason. In your case, if we're at a bar, maybe it's because you're drunk, maybe it's because you're not paying attention. In a football case, maybe it's because you didn't remember the snap count. Maybe it's because you thought that the play was going one way as opposed to the other. There are a couple more things that can go wrong. Now, on the flip side here, imagine you walk all the way over to me and I just hand you your phone. You're almost never going to drop that.
I don't think that analogy is perfect, but
it's flawed. It's flawed.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
But you understand what I'm saying, right? The difference between just handing someone something and expecting these grown athletes that are exceptional hand-eye coordination. It's the difference is 95% to 99%. So it's a small number.
So what you're saying, so you're saying that while there is slightly more risk in the toss play, the potential benefit that you think it outweighs anything that would be a run up the middle because you're trying to get a first down to ice the game.
Yeah. So in that situation, I would rather have them just throw a screen.
Have
the quarterback throw a screen to the outside because the idea.
See, what about the risk there of a
backward pass? I guess.
God forbid an interception or a fumble there or something. Or there's a lot more that can go wrong. I think on a screen pass than a toss play.
I think that a screen pass is easier to execute than a toss play.
Really?
Yeah. I do.
I'd completely disagree.
A screen because
I've seen way more.
So based on the based on the alignment, right? So that front five, they were coming in. That was basically engage 8 for Madden. You know that play what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where they send the house. That's basically what Dallas was running, and it was condensed into the center of the field. So if you spread it out on, I'm talking about a wide receiver screen here, not a running back screen, a wide receiver screen.
Yeah.
So a wide receiver screen, he takes one step back, it's a 2-step drop, and he flings it. That, to me, is a higher percentage play. To get the ball,
my counter-argument is that, let's say, DeMarcus Lawrence, for somehow, some way, gut instinct knows, wide receiver screen's coming, and he jumps out there. And, either he probably gets a hand on it, maybe he picks it off, whatever. Like
Worst case scenario there to me in my mind is that he deflects the pass. It's very, very low interception rate on a screen like that.
It is. Oh yeah, it is.
But the thing is though, is in that situation, you can see what he's trying to do with that toss, right? The toss is he's trying to get Dalvin to the outside. Because everyone's in the middle of the field. He's trying to get one-on-one on the outside and trust Dalvin to break one tackle. At that point, he could go to the house, right? So on a screen, you're accomplishing the same thing, but instead of just kind of a toss, which is sort of an awkward motion, you're putting the hand in your quarterback, having him run a two-step drop, three-step drop, not even a drop, basically. Just step back, fling it.
He better be just catching the ball and turning and flinging it right away.
Right. And that's something that he practices all the time, and I trust Stephon Diggs on the outside as much as I do one-on-one with the
Interesting. I never even considered a screen, but
it's just like
I wouldn't hate that either.
It's the purpose of that play was to get Dalvin to the outside where he's in a one-on-one situation as opposed to running him up the gut, which I don't like either. I would run outside zone probably to the right side of the field 3 times a row in that situation. That's how I would have called that play.
Either way, I think we both can say that it's a little bit more aggressive to include a little bit more risk in the play call, but ultimately it's more aggressive because you're just trying to ice the game there.
Right.
And if Dalvin catches that toss play cleanly, maybe he runs for 15 yards and a first down.
This conversation is moot then. Yeah. It's literally the fact that we are all jaded by Vikings lore, and we
That's
think
pretty much it.
Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So as soon as you saw him bobble that, it just felt like flashbacks just went through my head. And I mean, I'm just damaged goods on that type of play. Just any sort of risk there, I don't like it. But which kind of leads us to the defensive side of the ball here. Ultimately, the Cowboys get the ball back there with 3 timeouts. The defense are forced to make a stand after Britton Colquitt had an outstanding punt to give. Really, honestly, you know what? He kind of outkicked his coverage, but Tavon Austin bailed him out.
Yes,
but
that was wild that he fair caught that.
So here's what went down with the defense in brief. I mean, as a whole, the Vikings sold out to stop the run, and they accomplished that. Which is outstanding, especially given the situation. Jaleel Johnson deserves a golf clap based off of his performance stepping in for Linval Joseph. He's not nearly as effective as a pass rusher, and the damage was done because of that, because the Vikings were not able to get a pass rush from the interior. But they did stop the run, 2.4 yards per carry for Ezekiel Elliott. They did that very well. Now, the secondary was kind of put in a tough situation, and they did not do well with their assignment.
No, well, I think we got to give a lot of credit to Dak. He made every throw that he needed to make. Amari Cooper made every ridiculous sideline catch that he had the opportunity to make. So, and they really picked on Mike Hughes. And considering the fact that he was targeted, I think, 17 times.
For 146 yards.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been worse. It really could have been worse.
Actually less than 10 yards per reception.
It could have been worse. So not that he had a great performance, but I think it could have been worse. Randall Cobb somehow
he's been doing that against the Vikings for years.
So, I mean,
Mackenzie Alexander got blown up.
I'm not as worried, to be honest. I'm mostly just thankful that for some reason Kellen Moore and Jason Garrett thought it was acceptable to feed Zeke still when they needed the touchdown in that final minute. I think that their plan was to run out more clock so the Vikings didn't have any when they scored, but they lost yards with every attempt, and Zeke was ineffective the entire game, and they still kept going to him for some reason. And meanwhile, Dak is playing one of the games of his life, and I don't know.
That was definitely a poor coaching
decision, and it really helped the Vikings down the stretch. But
I mean, we talked about it on the pregame for this show. I mean, you're not going to get anything extra from Jason Garrett. He's just going to sit there, as you said, just sit there on the sideline, clap it up a little bit. That's all he does. And Kellen Moore is a rookie play caller. That's a rookie mistake, in my opinion. You can't. So here's my issue: is that yes, Zeke had been bad all game, but he's still one of the best 5 running backs in the NFL. So, would you have been shocked if he had broken through on one of those plays? Probably not.
Probably not, but I think you still have to look at the way the game is flowing. Zeke can't find anything. His longest run of the game was 6 yards, and it was in the first quarter.
Yeah.
and found a thing all game. Meanwhile, Amari's ripping up Mike Hughes and Xavier Rhodes.
Yeah.
Randall Cobb's dominating in the slot. You have options everywhere. Why not give Cooper a back shoulder throw in the end zone? Why not try to get Cobb one-on-one over the middle with Mac Alexander?
I probably would have gone a slant, to be honest. There, I would have thrown the slant over the middle of the Cobb.
There's so many better options that have way more of a positive possible outcome versus Zeke. Vikings clearly setting out on the wrong all game long.
Yeah.
And it wasn't working for him, and they didn't find anything. So
that to me is just the difference between experience, right there. Mike Zimmer seemed to have a step on Kellen Moore on that last drive.
He did.
And he got it. He got his. He got.
He stuck to it too, because all game long, Zimmer knew that. They were going after Mike Hughes. Yeah. They were going after Mike Hughes. He didn't really change anything.
No.
And really help him out. He stayed on that left side over there, and it seemed like Cooper or Gallup or whoever was over there was beating Hughes.
Yeah.
And he didn't really change much, and ultimately it worked out to just keep sticking to stopping Zeke on the ground.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. This isn't really a defensive question, but what did you think about Zimmer not calling any timeouts on that final drive for the Cowboys to slow it to like so? This is the theory that I was discussing with my buddy was. So that they started that drive with what, like 2:30, something like that on the clock, something around there. You call 3 timeouts, so the game is over pretty much no matter what if you stop them on 4th. Now, not completely over, but like that's the goal is to end. It's 4-down territory is the point that I'm making here. Okay. So why would you not? I didn't understand why he didn't try to stop the clock in the event that the Cowboys do get into the end zone. Because in that case, you're only going to need to get a field goal to tie up the game to send it to overtime. Why would you not try to have a full 90 seconds on the clock to give?
Yeah, I was perplexed by that too. That was
an interesting decision to me. It worked out in the Vikings' favor because ultimately they did give the ball back again because they couldn't get that first down. And then they allowed the chance for the Hail Mary. Which, by the way, I don't like the interception there. I would have much preferred a bat down. I mean, good for J-Rod Curse, but I was not very comfortable.
He was up high for that ball.
Yeah,
like
he's one of the most
how
athletic people.
Put in like a receiver or tight end at the end of the game on those. Mm-hmm. Like Gronk has been in, Randy Moss has been in, Calvin Johnson did that all the time. Vikings don't even need to do that because J-Ron Curse is 6'5" and can jump higher than anybody that the offense has. So
yeah. So as a whole, what is your grade for this defensive performance? Because you get an A+ against Zeke, slowing down one of the best rushing attacks in the game, not led by Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram. And on the other side of this, the corners got destroyed. Xavier Rhodes was not great. He wasn't the worst of them there. Hughes nearly had a banner moment with that pick when he could have had that pick 6, but other than that, which he didn't execute, he didn't execute there. With the exception of that, he burnt to a crisp basically all day. And I will say that he got pushed off of in the end zone on a phenomenal play by Amari Cooper, but he was not good. Mackenzie Alexander got shellacked. Like it kind of flew under the radar because of how poorly Hughes was playing, but Alexander was basically awful. The only guy that stood out to me in a positive way on the secondary was Holton Hill. He only had
he wasn't out there a whole lot.
Yeah, he only had like 3. He only had like 3 targets or something like that. Even Harrison Smith had that dumb penalty, which shouldn't have been called against him, but it happened. So overall, he kind of had a negative game. Anthony Harris rebounded nicely. I think that he had a couple pass breakups, and I liked what he was able to accomplish this week.
I mean, it's overall it's an average performance, I think. I mean, because let's keep in mind Dallas is, I believe, if they're not the best, they were probably the most efficient passing attack. Coming in as well. So chances are you weren't going to stop both of those aspects of the game, running the ball or throwing. So that kind of it was Zimmer chose to let either Zeke beat him or let Dak beat him, and he kind of let Dak beat him, and Dak did that almost throughout the whole game. But
he really did play outstanding, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, and even it's not even about just throwing the ball. Daniil Hunter had 10 pressures, and Everson Griffin had 7, and I mean, I don't know if they even got a sack out of those because he was just so good.
They had the one sack, the half sack between Everson Griffin and Armani Watts.
Yeah, so that was, Dak avoiding pressure was almost just as good, if not better, than the way he threw the ball. because Hunter was all over him, especially in the second half. Griffin was, I think stonewalled that a little bit early on, but then that spin move kept getting Smith over and over in the second half. So, and he was able to make play after play there. So the pass rush is still there. It just didn't quite get the sack numbers. And then the run game obviously was terrific in stopping Zeke. So I'm good. I'm the front four, front seven, I guess front six if you want to just include Barr and Kendricks. I really liked the way they played. I'm not sold again on the secondary, but hopefully they can rebound against Brandon Allen in Denver.
Absolutely. The one thing here that leaves me concerned heading into next week is that third down defense.
I remember I was pretty high. I was high on the third down defense.
And you were accurate. That take was right. This is the first time that really they blew it on multiple. I mean,
they were
I think they're
15.
I think they were like 4 for 4 on 3rd and 12 or more. Which oddly enough, coming into this game, Dallas was really good in those situations. But for whatever reason, I was more confident when the Cowboys were 3rd and 6 versus 3rd and 12. The Vikings could stop them on 3rd and short, but they couldn't stop them on 3rd and long, which is concerning to me. That's a real problem. Like, if you can't get off the field, that affects the game in so many different ways. I mean, not only is your defense going to get more and more tired, but you're allowing them to run up time of possession. You're allowing them to extend drives. You're demoralizing them. I mean, there is nothing in football more demoralizing than a 3rd and 12 conversion. Nothing. Like, that sucks. The fact that the Vikings were able to kind of come back from that and shift momentum on multiple occasions after doing that. Granted that a couple of those drives where they were able to convert on 3rd and long a couple different times ended up being 3-pointers, or just stonewalled in the red zone.
Right.
So situationally, the third down defense was god awful, but the red zone defense was amazing. They stepped up in big time situations. This was an interesting defensive performance. There's things that you can take away from it that were very, very positive, but at the same time, there's a lot of concerning pieces as well. But I do think a lot of it is fixable too. Just with experience. I think that it's not good for us, for Mike Hughes to have this type of a game, but I think it's good for him as a professional cornerback to have a game like that where you get targeted 17 times.
Welcome to NFL moment type of thing for him, because this is only his 10th game.
Yeah, it teaches you a couple of different things. Like, you can get your timing down better. I mean, his break on the ball was part of the problem. So, these curls or whatever, where he misjudged the route, he thought they'd be going deep or something like that.
And for what it's worth, those are really tough to defend in general.
Right.
Like, if you get the right timing on a hitch and you're not up on the line of scrimmage against them, it's almost impossible to stop.
But the next thing that's coming here, and this could prove to be a bigger problem if Hughes isn't able to correct this, is that now that they've seen that he has trouble, or more trouble than the average corner with these curl routes or these quick breaking routes, the next thing that's going to come is going to be the double move over the top. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because he's going to try to overcorrect. Like I said with Cousins before, he's going to see, 12-yard route, he's going to see that cut, and he's going to overcorrect. He's going to break too much to the ball. Guy's going to go over the top, and it's going to be an easy completion, probably for 6 points unless they have a safety help over top. So that would be something for me to, if I'm watching to see how Mike Hughes rebounds, I would watch to see how defenses attack him next week and then into the future, because I think that they will try to take advantage of that eagerness to correct that issue, because I do think that Mike Hughes is the type of guy that will come out there and specifically try to fix that point of his game, but then a new hole will open up. So I have a lot of confidence in him moving forward. He's still young. He's coming off of an ACL. There's a lot of reasons why things could go wrong for Mike Hughes right now, but really things could get worse, or they could get a lot better. So how he's able to respond to what coaches see on tape from this game and try to scheme him up on moving forward here, I think that'll be important in his development. But ultimately, the Vikings get the W here. It's kind of a wash. It's like you said, it's a welcome to the league moment because the Vikings did get the win. Now, if they don't win, we're probably having a much different conversation about Mike Hughes. But because they were able to get the win here, he's not the scapegoat anymore, and it's just it's a learning thing. And I think my expectation would be that he will grow from this as opposed to heading in the other direction.
Right. Yeah, I think Xavier Rhodes had these moments early on in his career. Wayne's did too.
Wayne's was the worst with that.
Yeah. So, and not to say that Hughes can't be better or will be worse or whatever the case is, but if every cornerback has this moment at some point early on, and then from there it's kind of telling what their trajectory will be in their career. But let's get to Skol Scale here. I'll let you start because I know you kind of hinted at a pretty big movement if the Vikings are able to win this game.
Yeah, I'm going to jump up to 9. So I was at 8.5, or I dropped it down to 8 after that Kansas City loss. I'm going to jump up to 9 here. Couple of reasons. First of all, is the way that you created the Skol Scale is based off of essentially saying how many teams do you think that the Vikings can beat in the NFL. I think after this win, I think they can beat anyone. And that's combined with New Orleans looking vulnerable, Kansas City looking vulnerable, New England looking vulnerable. Every team that was considered to be a power, not named San Francisco, has looked vulnerable in one way or another over the last few weeks here. So I truly believe now that the Vikings can beat anyone, and now I'm a lot more confident in them winning on the road too. So, I think the ultimate test here will be Seattle in a couple of weeks, as you mentioned earlier in the show. But right now, heading into Denver, I'm as high on this team as I have been on. Honestly, I know that 2017 was a great year, but I think I'm higher on this team now after Week 10 than I was on the 2017 Vikings after Week 10 with Keenum at quarterback. So
I think that's fair. I think that's
I believe in this team. The biggest roadblock to me right now is the fact that Green Bay is leading the division, and they are in. The Vikings may not have a home game in the postseason. That's really my biggest roadblock right now.
So, I'm with you in that. I think this team is better. Like if this team went up against the 2017 Vikings, when they were making that stretch run when they won like 10 or 8 straight games or 10 straight, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I think this team would beat that team on a neutral field, all the same personnel for each team, but the Vikings were in a way better position that year because you had, in theory, they won the game at home against the Saints, and then you were playing a backup quarterback for the NFC Championship game. So the Vikings probably won't have that this year. They'll have much better competition in the NFC, I guess is my point. So I'm a little less optimistic just because I believe more in the Saints. I believe more in the Packers. I believe more in the 49ers, I think. So, I'm at an 8. And I think I was at 7.2. I think this jumps me up to an 8. I like the Saints more, especially if the Vikings have to go there. I like the 49ers still. And obviously I like Green Bay, and I think they're going to win the division. So the Vikings are going to probably at this point, if they're a playoff team, which it looks like, things the way they're shaping up
things
right
are
now.
Looking good. Yeah.
They will probably have a road game. And
probably
I think it's
Dallas or Philadelphia.
It's going to be huge to get that 5 seed because I would rather not have the Vikings travel to Lambeau or New Orleans, or I guess maybe San Francisco for that for a 6 versus 3 seed game. But regardless, I'm at an 8. And now I think the big one is going to be if they can beat Seattle at Seattle on Monday Night Football. Right. A, that's going to be huge for the wild card race, but B, that's going to give me a lot of confidence this team can win in that wild card round of the playoffs.
Absolutely, I'm right there with you. What do our adoring fans have to say?
Yeah, so we got a couple here I wanted to touch on. Our first one is from Edwin von Broadmarkle at Nemox7 on Twitter. He says a 9. Defense was rocked all game, but showed up when it mattered.
Yep, they did do that.
Offense got things done when needed. Dalvin and Kirk were nearly flawless. And then coaching on point, and he also mentions the going for 2 pivotal decision. Yep. Completely agree with that. I think all the points there. I think we did mention some nitpicky flaws maybe with Kirk.
Right, but they were nitpicky. Exactly.
But overall, I think, the defense did. Eric Kendricks made the sensational play when it mattered. Yep. And the offense was smooth and it's kind of followed that Zimmer game plan where just run the clock out when you get ahead, and it ultimately worked, although it got a little bit close at the end there.
Yeah, I don't think this game is nearly as close if it's played at US Bank Stadium. I think that the difference in points here is the fact that we are playing in Dallas. So,
last one here from our guy, Mr. Minnesota, at Mr. Minnesota. There's a 2 O's at the end there.
Soda.
He's at a 10 out of 10. He says, "Bring on the Gophers." Because he said, "Bring on Bama" a couple weeks ago. Definitely not a perfect game, but a W is W. Kirk and the rest of the offense played clean, smart football. And defense made the plays they needed to win. So common theme there. Basically saying not a great performance, but like when it mattered, they stopped Dallas. Hopefully the injury report isn't too bad. I'm looking forward to the bye. Concerned for the team's health down the stretch my concern for that team's health down the stretch is more than anything else right now. So very satisfying win. He also says, "P.S. You guys are great." So nice.
I think we're getting close to being about where we left off when we stopped doing about the labor. So we appreciate that. Yeah, so the injury report thing is nice because I remember reading. I don't think that Trey Waynes was injured. I think he had something else going on, like a personal issue or something like that. So he'll be back. I'm not worried about him. Linval Joseph, apparently, Mike Zimmer said today that he might practice this week.
I don't think. I'm assuming the smart thing here would be to keep them out this week, go through the bye week, and then reassess after the bye week.
I agree, but
Joseph and Thielen.
It seems like this was, going into Kansas City, by the way, this is one of the healthiest teams in football. A lot has changed in about 2 weeks here, but they do have the bye week coming up. It might end up coming at the perfect time, which bye weeks always seem to come at the right time. I don't know how the NFL does that. They're like Vegas, where it just doesn't really make sense, but it makes sense, But yeah, I mean, I get it, dude. I'm feeling the optimism in Minnesota right now. I'm behind that kind of that raw fandom where you're blind to the flaws, or you can kind of not necessarily blind, I guess, but you can rationalize the flaws, which is my favorite type of fandom. Like, it's like with the defense. It's like, well, the defense wasn't great all day, but when it mattered most, they made the plays. I can get behind that now.
That is the narrative. If Jason Garrett and Kellen Moore decide to let Dak keep throwing the ball at the end there, and they probably score a touchdown, and then we're having a completely different conversation about it.
It's the defensive analysis is a lot different if they get 6 points at that last drive. So, all right, well, that's probably a good place to put a pin in it for the Vikings.
Let's I'll give like a 2-minute T-Wolves thing because I kind of want to talk about the Gophers more than the Wolves, to be honest. So,
let's do that. Break down the Wolves. They come off of a solid weekend. Overtime victory against Golden State, which was huge. That was one of my favorite Wolves games that I've ever watched.
That was fun. Watching Wiggins in crunch time.
Wiggins turned it up. Okogie continues to be outstanding defensively and show flashes of kind of offensive improvement. Cat in a down game still puts up a double-double. I mean,
I think Wiggins is one of the best, if not the. I think he is scoring the most crunch time points per game. I think that's
wouldn't shock me at all.
I think the parameters for that, it's like within 5 points and less than 5 minutes left in regulation or overtime.
They are looking like a 7 or 8 seed right now.
So, and I think they are actually a 9 now because of that loss to Denver yesterday, which
came close there
could have gone either way. Denver's obviously a really good and almost a powerhouse, you could say, in the West. And again, they're playing without multiple point guards the last couple of games here, so they're kind of, you got Jarrett Culver playing point guard, you got Okogie playing point guard, you got Wiggins playing point guard, you got guys that have not played point guard very much in their lives, leading the offense. So things will turn around there. I'm not worried about that so much. Losing to Denver is one of those where you look at the schedule before the season, you kind of think, that's probably going to be a loss.
Yeah. They're also one of the best teams in the West, right? I mean, Jamal Murray's talented. Nikola Jokic or whatever his name is. Best center in the game or power forward, whatever the hell he is.
Yeah. So, they're exceeding my expectations so far. We'll say that.
Yeah. I mean, I've liked what I've seen. The Golden State game was interesting because one of my buddies is he's a big sports fan in general, but basketball is his sport. So it's kind of weird because I try to adapt my fandom so that we can talk about sports because he likes football too, but like he's a basketball guy. So I try really hard to like basketball too, so we have something to talk about. And I told him, I was like, if they blow this game if they lose to Golden State right now, I'm off. I'm done. I can't buy into this team. And
then D'Angelo Russell puts up 50 or 52.
Yeah, man, he played the game of his life, and I believe it was Golden State had an 86% chance to win that game with like a minute 52 left.
Yeah, well then I think they were it might have been more than that with like 30 something seconds left because the Wolves were down 4, and then I think Wiggins got or somebody got a quick bucket or free throws, and then Rocco got a steal with like 10 seconds left.
He's a beast. I love that guy.
And then Wiggins went and made a layup, which by the way, if you watch the highlight of that game and all the Wiggins layups, like he drives by the initial defender and there's literally nobody helping. It's just like Steve Kerr's like, you know what, just let him. But I do want to mention that the Wolves against the Nuggets missed 39 threes, which is third most in the history of the league in one game. They were 6 for 45. So, nobody expected them to be a good 3-point shooting team. There's just not the talent, shooting talent on that roster. There just isn't any besides like Carl. So that's fine. But I love that they're taking the threes because like. There's an analytic, movement in football. There's an analytic movement in basketball as well.
It's bigger in basketball, I think.
Yeah, and, the 3-point shot is way more, efficient to score points, than like a 15-foot mid-range shot, which Wiggins has been. That's been his go-to shot since he started his career. So he's taking a lot less of those now, taking more threes and getting into the paint more, which is a huge positive.
I just want to say that I love Ryan Saunders.
Oh yeah.
One of my best friends. He used to date his sister.
Oh really?
Yeah. So he knows the Saunders family really well, and so when Ryan was hired, he was like, "Oh yeah, he's a great guy. He's a great guy. All that whatever." And I really do think that he is a great guy, and I thought that Ryan Saunders was a product of a couple things. One, nepotism. Two, just the fact that he's been around basketball, that he just inherently gained a lot of experience. And I didn't really think that he could be innovative or creative or anything like that. But I think that he's doing a lot of really cool things. The first and most important thing is that he's fixing Andrew Wiggins. I mean, the difference between shooting the 15 to 18-foot jumper versus taking one step back and shooting that three. Yeah. I mean, it's such a small little tweak, but it's changing the dynamic of one, how we look at Andrew Wiggins,
yeah,
and two, how his performance is on the court. I mean, did you see the shot chart against Golden State?
Yeah, I know.
It was unbelievable.
And even in crunch time, he started feeling himself and taking even more mid-range shots than I would have liked, but still I'd rather hit. I mean, he'll shoot 9 for 20 or something on a lot of nights. Like that's probably about his average if I'm, without looking. But if 8 of those are threes or something like that, and then you got 9 more in the paint, that's all. I'm all for it,
Yeah.
Because he's really good at getting into the paint, and if he can become an average 3-point shooter out there, that's enough for me.
Yeah. All right. So that is your Timberwolves minute there. Let's talk about leg number 2 of the banner weekend for Minnesota football. The Golden Gophers get a W over the Penn State Nittany Lions.
This is interesting because I don't think either one of us are really Gophers fans. I mean,
I don't think either of us really.
I'm not. I'm just like I am with the Twins. If they're good, I'm going to pay attention to them.
I'm even less than you are with the Twins. I legitimately I went to Marquette University. I have no allegiance to the Gophers whatsoever. I didn't even apply to Minnesota. I wanted nothing to do with the University of Minnesota when I graduated from high school. And granted, I don't have a football team at Marquette, so I always tended to just follow along with what my roommates like to watch, and that was Nebraska football. So I have no allegiance whatsoever. But obviously, as someone who resides in Minnesota and has lived the vast majority of my life here, I love to see any Minnesota team do well. But I never thought that the Gophers would ever even get to this point, honestly.
No. Oh, no.
Never. I grew up on a Gophers team that was going to, we'd be lucky to get to.
It's 50-50 to be bowl eligible every year. That's what I remember.
And that's what it's always been
high school and middle school and a little bit in college too. That's what it was. They never fluctuated from that 5 to 7 win window. That's what it was every year.
And I found myself very invested in this football game watching it. I was watching it alone, which is part of the problem because I'm sitting there and I'm just waiting for everything to go wrong. And from what I had known coming into this game about the Gophers, they were basically a running team. They were using 3 different running backs that were, getting 10 to 15 carries a piece.
But they have
game.
2 NFL receivers too.
I think they have 3. Okay?
Potentially 3.
And Tanner Morgan showed out. My God, he was unreal. Like, okay, so the first touchdown throw that he threw would have been intercepted and gone the other way for 6 in the NFL for sure. It was a floater that
for what it's worth, opposite hash. So like that's a long way in college, especially with those wider hashes. But your point stands.
Yeah. So with the exception of that throw, which was a great college throw, he made a number of other amazing. It's very easy when you have
Tyler Johnson was unbelievable. Like that, I think it was a slot fade that Johnson kind of tiptoed down the sideline and scored on.
Yeah,
that was right on the money. It was perfect.
And then you had the Ottman-Bell crosser over the middle too that he just eluded the entire Penn State defense. Which, for what it's worth, like I know the narrative right now is that Penn State DBs were too small and the Gophers could kind of just out muscle them. But that defensive line is outstanding. Excuse me. That defensive line is outstanding. They're going to get at least a couple pros out of that unit. And the linebackers are solid as well. And they played pretty well. But the corners, literally, they could not do anything against Bateman or Johnson, and then Ottman-Bell was just taking up space too. So Bateman and Johnson are looking like early day 2 picks. And Tanner Morgan is a good enough quarterback to get you where you want to go. Now, do I think that this is excuse me. Do I truly believe that this is a college football playoff caliber team?
No.
No, not at all. But do I think that they could win the next 3 games here and go be at 12-0 heading into Ohio State in the Big Ten championship?
Oh yeah.
I think they can.
How weird is that?
This is a good team. They're legit. They're real as hell. I mean, and Antoine Winfield Jr. I mean, can you be more clutch? Channeling my inner Chandler Bing right there. I mean, first possession of the game, interception sets the tone perfectly. That is the best case scenario when you get to defer to start the game. Get a pick, and then you set you up, get a 66-yard touchdown, open it up 7-0. That's how you upset a team. I mean, that's outstanding. Like, Antoine Winfield can play on my NFL team any day of the week right now.
Yeah, so the scenario that I've been thinking about is Anthony Harris is going to get paid, right? Like, he's going to get paid.
We got
probably not by Minnesota.
2 years till Winfield comes out, though. Nah.
Knows. I don't actually know what his status is. That's how much I'm a Gopher follower. I don't even know what class he's in. But that's the thought that was in my head while this game was going on. Is that Anthony Harris is going to get paid somewhere, and the Vikings that don't have near the cap room for him draft Antoine Winfield Jr. I don't know.
Is Winfield Jr. a safety still in the NFL though? He's a little small, or is he a slot corner?
That's fine.
That's fine.
That's fine. Earl Thomas is a safety.
Yeah,
that's fine.
That's a fair point. I was just I was dumbfounded by this game because
Penn State hadn't given up 24 points all year. The Gophers were the first team to do that, and they did in the first half.
They're a top 5 team in the country, and maybe they were a little bit overrated. Maybe. But worst case scenario, they were like the 6th best team in the country coming into this game.
I'm very curious to see what the Gophers' college football playoff ranking is.
So they head into, as of this recording,
they're 7 in the AP poll, and I'm very curious about what they get in the college football playoff.
They'll end up being like 12. The college football playoff poll, they feel the same way as us. They're like, okay, you guys are good, but no. I mean, it's going to be hilarious because they, a part of me believes Minnesota sports is going to happen and they're going to lose to Iowa, and then they'll win against Northwestern and then beat Wisconsin at home. But I mean, this is just this is fun. I'm in now. I'm not going to pretend like I'm this diehard Gopher fan of multiple decades that's been suffering.
Oh, I'm not either.
I'm not going to pretend to be that guy, but
I'm going to cheer for him.
I'm very excited. I
want to make one more point. The PJ Fleck shtick would be getting so old right now if they were 5-4. It obviously this is part of what it works for his players, and he's the motivational type guy.
Can we just say that he's a weird guy?
Which is fine. Guy. That's fine, but it's very good for him that it's working, because if it wasn't this year, this would be his 4th year or something.
Yep.
I would be getting so sick.
I really. As
someone who's not even a Gophers fan, I'd be getting sick of it.
I really like him though. I really do. I do think that he's just a funky ass dude, and I think that some of I think he's somewhat delusional, which I think is honestly kind of a good thing as a college coach, because you need to be able to inspire in college football, because you're not paying these kids.
And you have to be able to see a goal that isn't attainable, really. like right. If you take over Minnesota, that's a team that's had less than 7 wins in every season since I've known college football.
Yeah.
And then just be like, oh yeah, I'm going to take this team to number 7 in AP poll. Like,
he's thinking national championship. Did you see his new contract extension? He gets a $500,000 bonus for winning the college championship. Like, he put that in there. He negotiated that, or his agent did. One of them did.
He can have $1 million if he wants. That's fine.
He believes it's attainable. It's unreal, and I love it. But at the same time, I think, like you said, the shtick would wear very thin if you're a non-bowl eligible team with this coach that's, you can't be happy all the time. I just don't get it. Like, how is he always in such a good mood? And, like, how is he always so positive about I get it that he's wealthy and he's doing the job that he loves, and I mean, I can see how life is really good every day for him, but like, how are you always so positive? Oh, I mean, I guess you're 9-0 too, so there's not that many ways to be negative, but like, it's just impressive. Like, he's just a crazy ass dude, and I think he's perfect for the state, because the one thing that I keep hearing being repeated over and over again is that he's trying to kill the perception of Minnesota sports fan, like the Minnesota-ing, like blow it late. And he keeps talking about, like, we need to get rid of that. Like, that was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever. And I think he's successfully doing it. He's got a lot of people believing that not only can they, like, there are Gophers fans out there right now that believe that they can beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship, and I think you're nuts. But that's awesome.
I mean, you can't win it without. You can't win it without. I mean, you got to believe first. So
that's true. I mean, this is fun. It's just fun. I am invested now. And
what would the spread be right now? Ohio State, Minnesota, if they played.
They would be playing at Lucas Oil, right? I think they play at the Big Ten.
Neutral field, Lucas Oil. Yeah.
I think they'd probably be like. Probably like minus 14.5 against Ohio State.
I would have said 16.5.
Yeah, something like that. It's fun. I mean, it's fun though, because like, it's very, very realistic that they go down. They're going to Iowa, right? They're in Iowa. Yeah. It's very realistic that they beat them, and then you got Northwestern, which should be a cakewalk. Which in Minnesota terms, that means that it's a trap game and they're probably screwed. But then you get Wisconsin at home, and you have to feel confident in that. I mean, they already have the axe. They were better than Wisconsin last year. Jonathan Taylor's awesome and all, but they can't throw the ball, and they can't. There's no way. Like, dude, these receivers. This is Clemson level receivers. I hope you guys understand that. Like, this is like, these are two guys. Bateman and Johnson are going to be early mid-round picks, if not higher, depending on how they test at the combine.
There aren't many, if any, duos better,
right.
and then you add in Ahmed Bell, and
it's fun, man. Especially if Rodney Smith can continue to be
it's cool. I think the rest of the season, now here's the non-Gopher fan in me talking, but if they, don't get to the Big Ten championship, if they, whatever, it will still be very cool to have watched that game, watch them beat, the number 4 team in the country.
Yeah.
It's
a real college football experience.
Being both teams undefeated 9 weeks in, that doesn't happen around here very often.
It's crazy, because if I told you at the beginning of this year that the Gophers would win just 9 games and they'd beat a top 5 team, you would take that in a heartbeat without asking for anything more. But what PJ Fleck has done, and this is the best thing about his program so far, is that he has elevated the expectations to the point where we are thinking Big Ten championship or bust, Rose Bowl or bust type team. Because that even if Ohio State beats the Gophers in the Big Ten championship, that means that Ohio State's going to be probably the 1 or the 2 in the playoff bracket. That means the Gophers are going to the Rose Bowl. What? In Pasadena? Are you kidding me? Like, that's just so beyond my understanding of this program, and it's just such, like, it's so, it's awesome. And you don't even need, it's saying this as someone who is not a Gophers fan. It's very easy to appreciate what PJ Fleck is doing right now and what this team as a whole is able to do. And it's fun to see the Gophers having not just one, like, Max Williams weirdo guy as an NFL draft prospect. There are like 3 or 4 guys on this team that are legitimate NFL prospects, and it's fun to have that level of talent. And hopefully this will, like, the best part about it, honestly, is that the rich get richer in college football. If you win games, it's going to be easier to recruit. Mm-hmm. This could be a real thing. And while I don't buy into any of the buyout thing in his contract, $10 million is nothing to an SEC school or a Southern school. I hope that he sticks around long term, because I think that Fleck is he is what Minnesota needed.
He is.
So, all right. Any final thoughts on the Gophs, or have you said all you need to say?
I think that's covered it. We'll probably talk about it again next week, right?
Yeah, I think that I mean, if they continue,
we'll mention their college football ranking on the next show.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to not talk about the Gophers, especially with the hot stove hasn't heated up in Twins territory yet. The Wild are still an embarrassment, and the Timberwolves are they're piquing our interest still. But I guess
they're not an embarrassment, which is
the pessimist in me says that this won't continue. But the Gophers, I'm a believer. I'm there for that. So that wraps up the show. Thank you as always for listening. We do appreciate that. Hit the like button on if you're watching this on YouTube. Hit the like button and subscribe there. If you're listening, make sure that you're subscribing on iTunes. Leave us a review if you have the time. We'd appreciate that. 5 stars is always great, but I appreciate your objectivity about our show. So you give us whatever you believe is acceptable. So later on this week, we'll be back to talk about the Vikings. The next episode will focus entirely on the Vikings' impending matchup with the Broncos. That should be a fun one, breaking down the vaunted offense led by Brandon Allen. So looking forward to recording that show and putting that product out there. I think we should have some news on kind of the future of this show start coming next episode as well. I think we're heading in a great direction, and we're excited. So we'll share that with you guys on the next episode here. But as always, like I said, thanks for listening. We're building something here. I think it's starting to get better as time goes on. That's you guys too. So we appreciate it. And we will catch you guys later on this week.